This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Rich Gannon this week.
What are they saying? I don't even care or know. What?
You didn't see Rich Gannon's comments?
No.
He just said you were overpaid, you're a stat king, some of the criticisms I'm sure you've heard.
No, I don't need to answer to Rich Gannon, so.
Welcome to the Monday Mashup Detroit Sports Podcast. Your host, as always, is me, Shea Norling. You can find me on Twitter at NorlingShay. Kicking it off with Matthew Stafford. Doesn't need to answer to Rich Gannon. Okay, Matt. Good to know. Matt doesn't take his critics seriously at all, apparently, which is problematic if you ask me, because I would argue that Matt should take his critics seriously. So I am not alone today on the pod. I am being joined by my good friend, as usual, Tanner Seltzer. Tanner, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. You can hear me?
Oh, yeah. Loud and clear. We are on Skype again.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, another interesting weekend for a Lions fan. And, I think this is one of those nights where probably most Lions fans are just accepting their fate and probably drinking heavily along with it.
Yeah, I would... Look, I don't even like the Lions, if I'm being really honest. And after watching the game today, I need to drink heavily.
Yeah, I partook in some drinking earlier, but I've become numb to it.
Partaking in drinking later.
Yeah, I will. But I've become numb to this recent outburst of losing they've done, and just in general, they've lionized me. I'm used to it.
Dude, they are lionized. Look, I have a lot of issues with Matthew Stafford coming out and saying he doesn't need to answer to Rich Gannon, because it's basically like, I don't even need to silence my critics. They can just keep talking. I don't really give a shit. I'm going to get my game check, go straight to the bank, go back home to my beautiful wife and my children, and that's fine.
He's got to do what he's got to do, but, he's making millions upon millions of dollars, and this fan base is losing him very fast.
Dude, I think we are at the point now, like, Matthew Stafford fandom in the city of Detroit has reached DEFCON 5. Like, no, I don't think anybody likes him anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was the biggest Matthew Stafford slappy for the longest time. I defended him through and through, but this week and last week were the beginning of, like, I don't even know what I would describe it as, but he's losing me, and very quickly.
I'm out. I've been out. After last week, I was like, I'm done with this, dude. Look, I have some weird numbers on Stafford. And the first one I want to go into, it kind of depends, how much do you value Pro Football Focus? Like, what level of valuation do you put on Pro Football Focus and the way that they evaluate players? Tanner, I know you respect it, because a lot of times you'll send me their grades on guys like Deshaun Hand, who I was not huge on the Lions trading up for, but he's had a really nice year. We'll look at the grades for offensive line that Pro Football Focus puts out for college football. I think you and I both kind of subscribe to it and place a little bit of value on it. But I found I found an interesting one. Yeah, I found an interesting one on Stafford. Let me tell you if this sounds right.
Okay.
Based on PFF's DVOA stat, which is defense adjusted value over average replacement, for quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford ranks 19th in the NFL this year.
That's interesting. I wonder who's ahead of him on that.
The first 5 quarterbacks ahead of him on that list, ready? Mitch Trubisky, Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, and Andy Dalton.
Wow. That's literally the company that he has been put in over the last couple of weeks, I would say. And it's starting to dawn on me that, like, he is what he is at this point. He is Kirk Cousins. He is Andy Dalton. He is Joe Flacco.
Well,
which is scary.
Adam Kaplan, the NFL Insider, did a local radio show. I'm sure everybody knows which one. And he talked to the guys, and he actually offered some really interesting comparisons, because he was asked, what about Matt Stafford? Adam Kaplan said, nationally, people kind of view him as Joe Flacco.
Yeah, the Super Bowl win is nice, but he also had one of the greatest defensive players of all time and one of the better defenses we've seen in the recent, 10 years or so.
He also had a hell of a playoff performance, which is why I kind of struggle with comparing him to Flacco. But regular season, I can kind of see it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's it's scary to think that that's what we've come to. And, everyone had all this praise for Stafford in years past, oh, look at the arm action. He's like Aaron Rodgers. He's this and that. But he doesn't make the players around him better. You would think that losing a guy like Golden Tate, he would step up and make younger players that aren't as good better, and make this offense run more clean. But he just hasn't done that to this point in his career.
And he's a 10-year vet. And look, it's still, even today, I jump on Twitter and there are Lions Twitter people racing to defend this guy. And again, the Lions can't cover. They have no defense. They can't catch. They can't get open. They can't do this. They can't block. They can't protect. They can't do this. They can't do that. And I'm like, dude, we've been watching this guy for 10 years. We've seen him have a first ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver. We've seen him have a quality running game this season, one season with Reggie Bush. We've seen him have good offensive lines. We've seen him have a number one defense. How far are we going to move the goalposts for Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I've done. I know I'm guilty of it, is making excuses after excuse, and he's just not meeting our standards at all. And that was a playoff win. We kept making excuses for him. 2016, they had the best opportunity they've had in a long time. Then he injures his finger. That was a big excuse that I used and everyone else used. But I'm done with excuses for this guy. It's at this point, I'm giving him next season for me, Shea, and that's it. If he can't do anything next season, I'm done with him.
I'm right there with you, man. And I hate that I want to give him next season, but because it again sounds like moving the goalposts. I look at the Lions, I go, you got $41 million in cap and you have 9 draft picks. I'll give Stafford another year, but then I have to look at it and go, maybe I have to change the way I look at Stafford, because if he needs $41 million in cap and 9 draft picks to be successful, and all of those things need to hit well. Like, you can't bring in a useless LeGarrette Blount and then try to ride Stafford on that. You have to spend your money wisely, and you have to spend your picks wisely. All of that needs to hit, and that's for me to look at Stafford and go, I think he can win now. If you really need that much help, maybe you're not an elite quarterback.
Yeah, and I just kind of made this realization in my head that Matthew Stafford's very similar to Jim Harbaugh, and how the Michigan alum and fans would make excuses for Jim Harbaugh. They'd move the goalpost, and now it's nut up or shut up for Jim Harbaugh. And so far he's delivered this year, but Matthew Stafford is getting to that point. This Matthew Stafford of 2018 is Jim Harbaugh of 2017. Next year it is it for me. If he does not prove something on the field next year, I'm out completely.
Yeah, and he's got, by prove something, I mean, very simply, you have to win a playoff game. You make the playoffs isn't enough. You got to win a playoff game, or I can't support you anymore. That's it.
And
I can't support him now anyway.
And of course that falls on the whole team as well. And that defense did not look good at all, especially in the first half today, Shea. When you have a defensive head coach, it did not look pretty at all.
Looked horrible. Mitch Trubisky went out there looking like Joe Montana.
Yeah, I'm kind of a Mitch Trubisky hater, but today he absolutely balled out, and we've made 2 quarterbacks now in Russell Wilson and Mitch Trubisky look like all-stars.
Sam Darnold.
Which Russell Wilson's solid, trust me, but
Sam
Mitch
Darnold
Trubisky
sucks, and he looked like God against you.
Yeah, that's true.
And then people will go, but we beat Brady and we beat Rodgers. First of all, you didn't beat Rodgers because Rodgers went out and carved your defense apart. He got screwed by his kicker. You did beat Brady. That was a compromised Patriots team, but Brady's also 41 years old, and down the stretch, the last 3 games, he's really showing his age. So it's not like you beat peak Tom Brady either.
Yeah, I would say the only win that's validated was probably the Miami win. You can make points about Green Bay and the Patriots, of course.
Yeah, and then you look at Miami, but again, Miami's reeling right now, and you beat the Brocket ship.
Yeah, I think it was a solid win overall, but so far this year they have just not been what they need to be at all.
So I have another thing for the Lions, because there's only so much we can do with this team. We're going to end up beating a dead horse if we just bitch and moan about how they're screwed. I want to make it clear, I'm done with Matt Stafford. I'm not going to defend this guy. I haven't seen nearly enough to die on the hill of Matthew Stafford should be a franchise quarterback. He's an overpaid guy. He makes $135 million a year, has a wife who wants to come out and tell fans that they have to shut the hell up if they want to criticize him. Which, newsflash to Stafford, who has been disrespectful to the fans in every press conference he's done this past week, and newsflash to his wife, and I would never say anything about his family, but she went out and attacked fans, so I think this is justified. How dare you tell people who spend their time and money how to act about their team?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think she was completely out of line. The fans have every right to bitch and moan. This fan base went through an 0-16 season, not to mention all those other losing seasons on top of it. And this one's shaping up to be what looks like a 3-13 season or possibly a 4-win season. So, yeah, they're going to bitch and moan. Get over it, Kelly Stafford. Your boyfriend, or your husband quarterback has not been performing up to standard at all. He's not earning his paycheck the way he should.
She's the beneficiary of a $135 million contract. She's going to make all of this money because of him. She wants to come out and attack fans and go, look, you don't know any better, so shut the hell up. Like, it's not... Look, if you want to attack fans, look at the LA Rams, who are putting a 9-1 team on the field and can't even sell out their home stadium. Or the Chargers, who are putting a really good product on the field and can't sell out their own stadium. The Lions could go 3-13, they would sell that bitch out. So I tell you what, the fans have earned the right to whine and complain when Matthew Stafford isn't living up to expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And like I said, I think we've gotten a lot of people saying now Jim Bob Cooter needs to go, Matt Pasqualoni needs to go. Jim Bob Cooter is definitely on my number one on my hit list so far this year.
Yeah, I think Jim Bob Cooter is just... The play call from last week, I think, against the Vikings, when there were 3 wide receivers in the same spot down the field, like... I put a lot on Stafford, but you're not doing Stafford any favors when you run a call that stupid. So, I look at that. I look at Pasqualoni. This is actually a good time I can run this question in, because somebody on Twitter asked us, JBC or Pasqualoni, if you fire one after today, which is it? Both, one. But
yeah.
If I have to only fire one, it's Jim Bob Cooter. Because... Look, I can go and look at how bad the defense has been and how many points they're giving up, but then I have to go back and look. You started this game down 26-0. You scored, 6 points against the Vikings in the time that actually mattered. You scored 0 against the Bears in the time that actually mattered. And you scored 7 against the Seahawks in the time that actually mattered. So the past 3 weeks on offense have been abysmal. And you have a $135 million quarterback at the helm and a guy in Kenny Golladay who's a top 25 receiver who can't get schemed into games.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Jim Bob Cooter's number one for me to go, but Pasqualoni is definitely on that list because actually it's more on Matt Patricia. I think at some point he needs to come in and just take over the defensive play calling. If it's that big of a deal, if they look that terrible week in, week out, you need to come in and take over. Take some responsibility for your defensive scheme and your defensive-minded coach. Just take over, man. I
agree, 100%. And that kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about, because today Matt Patricia did something where I said, while I was watching the game, you are completely lionized. And that is, he did not call timeout before halftime, and he just saved the timeouts for absolutely no reason. And I was like, this guy is lionized.
I've seen a few coaches, not just Matt Patricia, but this year in the NFL, saves timeouts going into halftime. I'm like, why not give your quarterback a shot? Especially a guy like Matthew Stafford, who I know we've been, bitching and moaning about him today, but he has a big arm. He can make a play. Something could happen before half. You gotta be aggressive. And, that's the one thing about Matt Patricia is I question his coaching ability. You got to look back at a guy like Jim Caldwell just last year. He got the absolute most out of every single player that he had, and on the defensive side of the ball, Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, he got absolutely everything with pretty much the same roster, Shea.
Yeah.
So you question what the guy's doing. What he's got to look at himself in the mirror and say, are his coaching tactics working?
Well, look, I can tell you honestly, as a Patriot fan, and our defense hasn't been great this year. In fact, it was pretty awful today. But I can say with all certainty, I don't miss Matt Patricia a ton, because the difference on the defensive side is really null and void. And they've played pretty well on certain nights. They've played pretty badly on days like today. But for the most part, that defense has held up since the first 3 weeks. I don't miss Matt Patricia a ton. There was a question sent to us on Twitter about Titter. Oh, my God. There was a question sent to us on Twitter about Patricia, too, from Steven Lebenbaum. Is Patricia on the hot seat after another horrible performance? And I got to answer this, yes, absolutely. Because the thing about being a head coach in the NFL is these opportunities don't come around all that often. I know you have like 6-7 coaches a season that get canned. Opportunities for guys who are assistants to become head coaches doesn't happen every day. And when you come in and you blow it the way Patricia's blowing it right now, you kind of got to answer for that. And you don't get many more opportunities after you blow the first one. So, yeah, I think Patricia is on the hot seat. I think he might be in over his head as a head coach. The way he's treated the media with the whole sit up straight thing, the way he looks on the sideline when he's just got the pencil hanging from a backwards hat and the poncho and the beard that looks like he hasn't touched it in 3 weeks. Like, I don't know, dude. I don't think he's a head coach.
Yeah, I don't know. He's got a, like, I'm at a loss for words just because I think he has one more year on his resume, like one more year left with this team. They got to make some progress. Him and, Bob Quinn are tied at the hip. So, they want to get their scheme in. They want to get their players in. I don't think he's on the hot seat this year. I don't care if they go 3-13 the rest of the way. They have to, the draft next season, the offseason is going to be huge. And like I said, next year they got to be at a playoff berth or contending for the playoffs at the very least if he's going to keep his job.
Well, and what's interesting is you brought up Bob Quinn, and I praised Bob Quinn for the Snacks Harrison trade. I praised him for the Golden Tate trade. I thought both moves were great. They set the Lions up for the future. I got a little bit of an issue with Bob Quinn now because you look at the defense today. You got Damon Harrison. You were good against the run today. Horrible against the pass. But you look at this team, they aren't going anywhere. And this is a guy in Bob Quinn who, at the end of last season when they fired Jim Caldwell, came out and said, look, guys, 9 wins, it's not acceptable. We got to be better. Well, now you're sitting at 3-6. You're not winning 9 games this year. You're sure as hell not winning 10. And you want to say nothing because Bob Quinn hasn't spoken since the draft. Like, this guy has to come out and talk to us at some point because I thought 9 wins was unacceptable, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, and really, like, looking back, like I touched on earlier, it makes me think of how good of a job Jim Caldwell actually did and Terrell Austin actually did, just getting the most out of every single had on that roster, because it's basically the same roster if we really look at it, with a few pieces here and there that are different. But I mean, dude, like, Bob Quinn has definitely got to look himself in the mirror. Like, he's had a lot of picks that are hit or miss. It's very much like 50-50 down the middle, whether it's a hit or a miss on his picks. So, yeah, like you said, he's got to come talk to us and he's got to answer for some questions.
Well, and you look at some of the guys that picks got wasted. 2nd-round pick on Amir Abdullah, blew it because you just released him and now he's gone to the Vikings. 2nd-round pick on Teez Tabor, blew it because he can't cover anything. Like, I think it's time. Obviously, we're all in the boat that the Lions need to tank this year and work on the defense in the draft. But I'm questioning, is it time the Lions tank and also look for a quarterback?
I'm gonna say absolutely not on this one. Like you said, I think they need to go for a defensive player. Like, get as high as a pick as you can. I'm sure there's going to be something excellent by the time the draft rolls around. If you want to take a quarterback later in the draft, I'm probably for it. Like, give me a 3rd or 4th round quarterback. I'd probably be like, okay, you know what? It's probably warranted. Give Stafford a little bit of a little bit of competition, see what that guy can do. But right now, I mean, it's a complete gamble to draft a quarterback, especially in the 1st round. It's not a guarantee whatsoever, and we know what we have with Matt Stafford. We know we can make the playoffs with Matt Stafford. The question is, can he take the next step and win a playoff game? I don't think the risk is worth it at this point. But after next year, we'll see if my mind changes or not.
My question for it is this: after 10 years, how much further is your next step going to be? Like, you've been doing this for a decade, and we've never seen you go that next level to play on that next level. And I think the counter-argument is, obviously, in the NFL, it's damn near impossible to find a quarterback. It's so hard to find a quarterback in the NFL that the Cowboys are going to give Dak Prescott an extension. So there is that aspect when you got to look at it and go, I don't know if they can just bail out on Stafford because of how hard it is to find someone who's good at that position. And then there's the thought, this is going to be a weak year for quarterbacks. A lot of them are coming out in 2020. So maybe hold on to the $41 million, get some pieces for him, get some draft picks. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, maybe next year you decide, let's do 6 wins again and get a nice draft pick and get a quarterback the 1st or 2nd round.
Yeah, I'm completely on board. I think we're pulling the trigger just a little too soon on Matt Stafford. I understand the frustration with him, and maybe it's just me being a Matt Stafford slappy, but we need to give this guy just one more shot. Like, I'm telling you, just one more season. If he doesn't produce, then we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I can't defend him anymore. I can't. I have to see him go out and do it now, and I've defended him for far too long. I can't defend him at all. I've always said I need to see more. I need to see him do it against winning teams. I need to see him do it in all 4 quarters instead of just the 4th. But I always defended him. You know, he makes the team playoff viable. He's the only reason they get there. If he weren't there, they wouldn't win any games. Blah, blah, blah. Dude, it's time to just play. Like, I'm tired of the excuses.
Yeah, I'm definitely there with you, Shane.
So I want to move on to Michigan State. because I was a little disgusted with this one, and I don't even want to spend too much time talking about what went on the field, because it was abysmal from an offensive perspective, awesome from a defensive perspective, because Ohio State couldn't do shit for the majority of that game. But on the offense, just awful. And it was awful coaching, bringing Lewerke in to start, bringing Lewerke out, bringing Lombardi in, bringing Lewerke back in. Then we find out today Lewerke made comments where he said at times he was asking to be pulled from the game, saying that Lombardi should have been in instead of Lewerke. He wanted to come out and give Lombardi that opportunity because he was hurt and he couldn't play, and the coaches still rolled him out there. Dude, I think what's happening from a coaching perspective in Michigan State this season is borderline malfeasance. Like, this is awful. It's to the point that if D'Antonio doesn't fire people, I kind of want D'Antonio gone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you? Let me ask you this, Shea. What do you think their record will be at the end of the year?
This year?
This year. Yeah.
Right now they're 6-4. Who do they got? They got Rutgers in the last game of the year. Who they got next week? I think they're probably going to finish an 8-4 football team, if I'm being realistic.
Yeah. So I mean, coming into the season, if I told you they're going to finish 8-4 after a 10-3 season last year, you would probably be pretty disappointed, right?
I'd be extremely disappointed.
Yeah. And if we just look at it, throw all the bullshit aside as far as, injuries and all this other stuff, this Mark D'Antonio is viewed as an elite Big Ten coach, which he is. He's at least top 3, and I can guarantee you that.
It's not saying much because number 4 is James Franklin, and he's a fucking idiot.
I'm not going to argue with that. But it's just he's not meeting expectations, and this is the second time in 3 years that this has happened. And I think it's also funny, I have to throw in a quick jab, that now Mark D'Antonio in his last 6 games is 1-5 against his rivals, very similar to how Michigan State fans like to point that out about Jim Harbaugh.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was about to say, if you had told me they go 8-4 with a third consecutive loss to Northwestern and losses to Michigan and Ohio State, completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and I mean, you mainly want to point to that Northwestern game. I don't know how you're losing to Northwestern at home.
Yeah, 3 of 4 losses have come in East Lansing.
Yeah, the offense is terrible, and I mean, if I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm definitely clamoring for Dave Warner to be gone. Probably this week. Probably not. I wouldn't even wait till the end of the season. The dude,
no point.
When you run a jet sweep in your own end zone and doesn't even execute it properly, you got some problems on your hands.
No
Big
point.
time.
That wasn't even a jet sweep. They put the wide receiver in motion, and then Lombardi called the snap, and it hit the guy while he was running across.
Yeah. I mean,
come on. What was it, like a direct snap to the wide receiver in motion? What are we doing? And then you get it turns into a touchdown because Ohio State falls on it. What the hell is this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete, head scratcher of a game, and I feel bad for the defense because they're actually out there busting their ass every single series. But when you're out on the field for that long, when your offense can't produce a damn bit, that's going to happen. Your defense is going to wear down, and a team like OSU will take advantage of it.
And that's where I feel this is kind of the way that I think Michigan fans felt last season when they had one of the best defenses in the country and their offense couldn't do anything. Is exactly how I feel this year, because Michigan State has one of the best defenses in the country, and their offense can't do shit. They cannot bail that defense out, and that defense plays their guts out on a week-in, week-out basis. The way they played against Michigan was phenomenal. The way that they played against Ohio State yesterday was phenomenal, and the offense continues to let them down. It's unacceptable to me, and Dave Warner needs to be fired this year, or serious changes need to happen at that university.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely you hit the nail on the head as far as comparing 2017 Michigan to 2018 MSU. I think that's quite an excellent comparison.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, and I said I don't want to spend too much time with the on the field stuff for Michigan State, Ohio State, because again, there's only so much we could say about the Lions. There's only so much I can say about Michigan State. The offense just isn't good. That's going to be a problem. I think there's positives to take away from Rocky Lombardi, but other than that, I can't give you a ton. Like, Lewerke's hurt. Here's the thing about Lewerke. This falls on Michigan State fans. Some of you suck. Some of these State fans, man, some of you guys just stink. If you're a State fan who was happy that Ohio State beat Michigan State because Michigan doesn't get an automatic bid to Indy, you are a piece of garbage. You are an insecure loser, and you need to have your head checked. Because there's no way that you should be rooting against your team to beat Ohio State and go to the Rose Bowl just so that Michigan gets held out of Indy, maybe. Come on. And then Michigan State fans who were booing Brian Lewerke when he came back on the field. What are you doing? You want to boo somebody, boo the coaching staff that rolls a hurt kid out there to play. Don't boo the kid because he's hurt. Then we find out he was literally asking to not play because he's injured. What are you booing him for? Boo your coaches because they're the problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know why you don't. I mean, obviously, Lewerke's been hurt for a while now, and I don't know why you don't just let Lombardi even just get some snaps. It might do him some good for next year. If Lewerke, I don't know if he's planning on coming back, but if he does, even just getting some snaps for Lombardi as a backup for next year will do him so much good. And he's still so young. I don't know why you just don't leave him in a big game like that. He needs those every snap he can get.
If the expectations for this season were Big Ten championship game, possible playoff appearance, they're gone. And those were the expectations, and they're gone. So don't play Lewerke anymore. Put Lombardi out there, let him grow as much as he can in puff games against Nebraska and Rutgers and whatever stupid bowl game you play in, probably against some mid-tier Pac-12 team. Just let him go. Yeah, because Lewerke is clearly hurt.
I would be very cautious if I'm a Michigan State fan going into that Nebraska game too. I feel like late in this year they've kind of found themselves. And, they could be a dangerous team, so that could be an interesting game next week.
We got to go to Nebraska.
Yeah, it's scary. You said it at the beginning of the year. You said Nebraska.
We always lose there.
And now it might come true. It might come true this time.
Yeah, except I didn't think it'd be our 5th loss of the season.
Yeah, you thought it'd be playoff implications, which it's not. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, whatever. Neither team is any good. Whatever. So I want to talk Michigan, too. Now, I don't want to talk Michigan-Rutgers because, really, what are we going to take away from Michigan pounding Rutgers? Everybody pounds Rutgers. I'm a little surprised they let Rutgers score a touchdown, but whatever, it happens. I don't know where you're at with that.
It was kind of a broken play, just a long run. I mean, it was kind of, I feel like someone missed a gap, but it's not a big deal. Like you said, one touchdown on the day. I think I'll take it.
Rutgers is one of the, Rutgers, that video that came out of Ben Simmons talking to, I can't remember who it was, on Fortnite, and they're like, hey, man, you good for one more? Who you playing tomorrow? He goes, oh, I think he was talking to Karl Anthony Towns. He goes, hey, who you playing tomorrow? And he said, the Hawks. He said, oh, you definitely got time for one more. That's like playing Rutgers. That's what playing Rutgers is.
Yeah.
Hey, man, Chase, you got time for another beer? I don't know, man. I got a game tomorrow. Who you playing? Rutgers. Oh, you definitely have time for another beer. That's really how it goes.
Yeah. I think I loved seeing the second string quarterbacks getting in, Peters, Milton, all of them getting some work in. I wish McCaffrey was there, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, good for them to get some reps. So I have a question, and I because I think this is an out-and-out homer take, but it's a take that a lot of Michigan fans are throwing around, is that if Michigan and Notre Dame played today, Notre Dame would get blown out.
Okay, here's my thing. I kind of, you showed me this question before the show, and I've had to think about it. If that game is played in South Bend again this week, I think Michigan wins the game. I don't think they blow them out. I think they win a squeaker. I think Michigan learned a lot from that game, and I think I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that first loss of the season set the tone for the rest of the season for these guys, and it was a motivating loss. It really was. You learned a lot about Shea Patterson. He had to improve. The defense was, iffy in the first half, but they stepped it up in the second. But I think right now they would win if it was in South Bend. If it's neutral field, though, I think Michigan wins by a touchdown, Shea. I'm being completely honest with you. I think, being in South Bend at home changes things. I don't know if you classify as a 7+ win as a blowout, but I think that would happen in a neutral site game. And, I think this team has improved so much week in, week out. You see how dominating that defense is. The interesting stat, the past 6 weeks, I think it is, they haven't let up over 100 yards passing to any school. That's incredible to me. Despite the fact who they're playing, I don't want to hear, I don't care about that. And I think one last point I want to make is it's kind of funny how last week I brought up a point about how Notre Dame's strength of schedule might hold them back when it comes to the college football playoff. And on College Game Day and on one of the other ESPN college shows, some people were echoing the same thought that I had, that if it came down, and listen, if it came down to Notre Dame and Michigan, they might put Michigan over Notre Dame just because of their strength of schedule.
Not a fucking chance. If Notre Dame's undefeated, you don't get to pick apart the schedule if they're undefeated. If they don't lose a game, you cannot pick apart the schedule.
Listen, Shea, I'm just telling you what they're saying and what
I don't care what they're saying. These are all paid hands, dude.
You are not the committee.
If it's
You are not the
I'm not the committee, but the committee's not talking. If we're talking about the guys who do game day, these guys have been picking Michigan since the start. Of course, Desmond's going to go out there and go, I think they'll put Michigan in.
No.
Of course. No. What's the dude's name? In the middle, I'm blanking on him, but he went out the first college game day. He said Michigan's going to go to the college football playoff. Of course, he's going to double down on that now. If Notre Dame's undefeated, you don't get to pick apart their schedule because they didn't lose and they beat you, week 1 or not. I think it's ridiculous that they say an undefeated ND.
If Michigan goes out, beats Ohio State by, let's say, 2 touchdowns, and then goes and blows out Northwestern in the Big Ten game, you have to take that into account as flare points. These aren't, middle of the class road teams. This isn't Florida State at home. This isn't, who else? USC was like a 5-win team. Look at their schedule.
What about 13 Syracuse?
Okay, they haven't played them yet. They might lose that game very well.
If they lose that game, then Michigan should get in ahead of them. I 100% think that. But if ND goes undefeated, there is not a chance in hell Michigan should jump them. Not one. They beat you and they didn't lose. You can't pick apart the schedule if they don't lose.
I'm just telling you what these guys on College Game Day are saying.
These guys on College Game, same thing with the Fox Sports guys. You want to talk about Skip says Michigan can beat Bama. Of course Skip's going to say that. He's on a network that broadcasts half Michigan's games. Same thing with Coward. Oh, Harbaugh's the best coach in the Big Ten. Okay, finally this year he's showing that, but what did he have the past 3 years to show that? And Coward goes out, puts that take out in August. Because he's on a network that plays all their games. ESPN and Fox aren't playing Notre Dame games. They're all on NBC. Nobody has a paid hand in their pocket to say, hey, go pump ND. There's no way the committee would leave out an undefeated Notre Dame.
Listen, it's an interesting debate, which obviously you're very upset about, but it's interesting to bring up because it's becoming a national topic now. If that came down to that scenario, which I don't even think it will, and if I'm being completely honest, but it's an interesting thing to talk about, and it's gathering some momentum. And I brought it up last week. That's all I was pointing out, was that it's getting some national attention now.
I think the one that's gaining attention is that if Georgia beats Bama and Clemson and Notre Dame both win out, Michigan's staying home for Bama.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, it is what it is at that point. Obviously, I would have some gripe against it, but, I don't know. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, if I'm being completely honest.
No, and we are. And I think it's kind of the funny thing with the stupid committee bringing out the rankings every Tuesday in the last week of October, first week of November, because what are we really saying? These are the top 4 teams. We know it's going to change. Like, nobody gives a shit what the top 4 teams are now. I care what the top 4 teams are on December 2nd or whatever day we find out who goes to the playoff. Like, right now, it does not matter because ND can lose to Syracuse. Clemson can lose a game somehow. Things happen. Chaos always happens every single season. We want to have these big debates about. And I also think that being a top 4 team, like, if you get into the playoff, that's not necessarily the same as being one of the 4 best teams in America. Because there's years, like a couple years ago, where USC lost that game to Bama week 1 and was emotionally distraught and lost a couple September games. By the end of the season, they were playing better football than anyone in the country, but they got left out.
Yeah, and then I think that's the game they went to the Rose Bowl and played Penn State, and they won in a squeaker.
It was 55 to 40 something.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to take in consideration, but they're not going to put in, I think USC, what was like a 2 or 3 loss team at that point. I mean, they can't do that, obviously.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of my point is, like, it's being in the playoff does not necessarily make you one of the 4 best teams in America. But I think if Michigan wins out, they absolutely deserve to go.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, and if you look at it, if we're using that argument as well about being the hottest team in America over the past week, few weeks at the end of the season or whatever, a 1-loss hot team going to the Big Ten title and blowing out Northwestern or beating Ohio State on the road, those are pretty big wins. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It was an interesting argument that we talked about last week.
Yeah, and again, like, I know we got a little heated, but I do think it's a little bit ridiculous when people start saying an undefeated Notre Dame would get left home for a team that they beat head-to-head. I think we're getting a little out into la-la land with that.
We'll see. It's if it comes down to that, it's the debates going to be absolutely insane.
The other thing about Michigan is this is, without a doubt, the most pressure that Jim Harbaugh has faced in his tenure.
You think so? I think in a way it still is. It's like I said at the beginning of the year. I said win 2 out of 3 against rivals, which he's on course for. He's got to beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten title. Everything else after that is house money, which is the college football playoff and any wins after that. So, I mean, yeah, he has to go beat Ohio State. And then on top of that, he has to go beat Northwestern again. So, yeah, the pressure is definitely on him, but I don't think it's as much as we want to portray it as because, you know, it's still – obviously, I'm not taking anything away. The pressure's still on him, but he's got to, you know, come through towards the end of the year.
I just think the way that the road has been paved for him, like people have already put Michigan in the playoff because you're going to play a 4-loss team in the Big Ten championship, and you are going to play an Ohio State team that is without their best player, with a coach who has 1 foot out the door, with a ton of off-field issues, and an offense that cannot run the ball against your defense. Good luck. And a defense that absolutely stinks. Like, I don't think if you don't beat Ohio State, that's kind of bad because Ohio State's not that good. But that's where I think he is under a lot of pressure because it is still a rivalry game, and it's like Harbaugh now has the road cleared for him to get to Indy and to get into the playoff. If he doesn't do it, it would be a colossal failure at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's definitely not full strength. They're not anything like they have been in years past, which I totally agree with. They need to go out there and take care of business, but anything can happen in rivalry games. We've seen, 4-loss teams beating a higher-ranked opponent, an undefeated team or something. It's happened with MSU in Michigan, Ohio State in Michigan. It's happened all the time. So anything can happen, but yeah, Jim Harbaugh has to go to Columbus and win that game big time.
Yeah, and that's where I know I just said like it'd be colossal failure. He doesn't get to the Big Ten championship. He doesn't win that and go to the playoff. The only way it wouldn't be colossal failure to not go to the playoff is if something happens that's completely out of his control, a la Georgia beats Bama and the committee goes, look, we're not letting Bama sit at home, so we're sorry. That's the only way it's not a failure to not make the playoff in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I completely agree. If it's something completely out of his hands, then so be it. But if he goes out there and loses, and then that eliminates him, then yeah, of course the what's the word I'm looking for? I
wish I could help you, buddy.
Dude, I'm so lost right now. What is going on?
Well, okay, so we'll come out of it with the sad thing for Michigan is I don't think they totally control their own destiny because I think Georgia has a play in it. The good news for Michigan is if you win out, it's going to be very difficult to leave you out, especially if somebody else loses.
Yeah, of course. And if Georgia loses in the SEC championship, they're gone. The only team we'd have to worry about is Oklahoma. They'd have to do something crazy as far as beating West Virginia twice, which I think is doable, but I still think Michigan gets in.
And yeah, I think even if Oklahoma does beat West Virginia twice, you have to look at that Texas loss and go, how good is Texas really? Because I don't think Texas is back. So I don't see a world where if you win out and Oklahoma wins out, Oklahoma jumps you. I don't think that happens.
Yeah, and I think everyone saw Oklahoma's defense this past weekend. If you watch that game, they couldn't tackle worth a damn. Neither team could, but that's just the Big 12 in general. I think they would value a very good defensive team in Michigan and a team in Michigan that also has a pretty decent offense, I will say.
Yep. All right, so college basketball tipped off a couple days ago, and I have a message for the Detroit Pistons. Tom Gores, if you listen to Detroit Sports Podcast, and I hope you do, don't win another game this season. Not one. Don't win one single game the rest of this year and get Zion Williamson in the draft because that dude is fucking crazy.
Yeah, the dude's a beast. If you watch that game, your jaw dropped. This dude reminded me of LeBron if he ever went to college.
Dude, it was like LeBron if LeBron had Shaq's build.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. But
and could shoot threes.
We all know that's not going to happen, Shea. Let's be completely honest. They're still just going to go make the playoffs and be completely dog meat and just get eliminated.
Sickening is what it is.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, if you get Zion, here's the thing, and I have another question about Zion because I want to know where we place him in all-time college recruits. I know it's fucking early, but
very early.
I look at the Pistons, I go, if you get Zion, okay, you have a team that cannot sell out an arena for shit. You can't sell half your tickets to save your life. If you get Zion, you could win 25 games that first year, and you would sell out damn near every night.
That's an interesting point. I haven't really thought about it until you just brought that up. But yeah, that would be he would definitely be a piece that would gather fans' attention just because he is like that exact player this Detroit Pistons fan base has been craving for years.
He is a freak. He's one of those guys. I almost want to get on a flight to Duke and go see a game because he's that good. If they were coming here to Breslin, oh my God, I'd be there in a heartbeat. I wouldn't care how much it cost. I got to see this kid play live.
Yeah, I wish they do the Big Ten ACC Challenge. I wish Michigan or Michigan State played Duke. I don't think they do. I know Michigan plays North Carolina, but that's unfortunate, the scheduling aspect.
I think Michigan State does play Duke, but I think it's on the road. No, Michigan State plays Louisville. I'm sorry. Now I remembered. But anyway, I think Northwestern plays Duke or something. Somebody who's going to get murdered plays Duke.
I hope
But
Nebraska plays them and just gets absolutely shit pumped. That'd be great.
so 2 questions regarding Zion. I'll get the first one out of the way because I want to know, is there even a point to play this season, or can we just give the title to Duke? Because they not only have Zion, they have the second and third best freshmen in the country in Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett. And those guys, the first night, I think they combined for like 88 points in the first game. And then today they played Army. And I think, again, they combined for just an outrageous number of points. Like, these 3 guys alone could beat the hell out of most college teams.
I mean, yeah, of course. We have to play the season out because injuries happen, stuff like that. You never know. These guys could regress at some point. So obviously, I'm going to vote for playing the season out just because I still want to root and watch my Michigan Wolverines hopefully make another Final Four appearance, which I don't think they will. But
Yeah, we got questions about
I can
them.
be hopeful. It's still early. All right, buddy, let's relax.
Okay, so then my other question about, and I asked the first one kind of facetiously because obviously I'm just like, Duke is the Golden State of NCAA basketball right now.
Right now they are, yeah, for sure.
But then my other thing is, if we take Zion and we put him up with the all-time recruits like Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons, where does he rank in that group? Because I think this is the best pro recruit we've seen since Anthony Davis.
I mean, yeah, I can't think of anyone who's better than him. I guess Anthony Davis would probably be like 1-2 with Zion Williamson, if you ask me. No disrespect to Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, those type of guys, but this guy's a freak, and I think he's an absolute number 1 pick. And I bet you when the draft rolls around, there's going to be so many trade offers for that number 1 spot just because they know this kid is the real deal.
Dude, Danny Ainge is going to find a way. He's going to find a way to get the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah, you wish. Somehow he will.
He's going to sell. He's got 4 firsts. He's going to trade 4 first-round picks for the first pick and take Zion.
I will literally not watch NBA basketball ever again if he ends up on the Boston Celtics. I promise you.
The Golden State Celtics, baby.
Oh, my God.
So local college basketball, Michigan State went out today, murdered whoever. I can't even remember who they were playing. Florida Gulf Coast. Went out and murdered them. And in game 1 in the Champions Classic game, a game where a lot of people thought Michigan State was going to get blown out, they only lost by, I think, 4, and they were really just a couple free throw makes away from taking down the number 1 team in the country. So my question for the Spartans is, did losing their 2 lottery picks somehow make them better? Because they look like they're playing smarter basketball, and they look like they're playing more team basketball than they ever did at any point last year.
I mean, maybe this is on Izzo. Maybe he heard the outside chat about him just adapting and making his players just perform because he hasn't done that in previous years. So maybe it's on Izzo. Maybe it's on the players. I'd probably lean towards Izzo. Just so far earlier in the season, they did look pretty decent against Kansas, but free throws, you got to hit them.
What's interesting to me is Michigan State this year doesn't really have NBA talent anywhere except like a Nick Ward, and when you look at teams that Izzo has had that had NBA talent, they tend to do worse than the teams that are like really good college teams. Like when Izzo had Adrian Payne and Gary Harris and all those guys, and everybody goes, they're the best team in the country, they're going to win the tournament. They ended up getting bounced in the Elite Eight, I think. The following year, Travis Trice, who would never see an NBA minute, takes him straight to the Final Four. Like the year he won the national championship, he had Zach Randolph coming off the bench, but it wasn't a ton of guys who went into the league and made noise. In fact, Zach Randolph's the one who made the most noise off that team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I just think Izzo, he's like you said, the teams that aren't built for they don't have NBA talent, they tend to do better just because they play more as a team. And I think maybe that's what you have with MSU this year. But I think it's still a little early because this is typical MSU. They go lose that first big game because they always seem to schedule a big game against a big time opponent, and they lose that game. Did they look better? Sure, absolutely. But they need to, improve as the season goes on, which they tend to do, and then show up in March, which they haven't done. So we'll see.
Well, I'll tell you what they got to do is they got to beat Michigan. You got to take out John Beilein because he's had our number. I need Michigan State to go out, beat Michigan. I need him to come at least like maybe 1-2 losses at most in Big Ten play.
and
make a trip through the tournament. Well, when you have Tom Izzo, I think the standards have to be high, and maybe they haven't been high enough for a while, because I think this is a guy who gets let off the hook a lot too. And he hasn't been to that many Final Fours. He hasn't won a national championship since 2001. A lot of state fans want to coronate him as one of the GOATs. I'm not there. Dude, you got to beat good coaches. You got to beat the Kentuckys, the Dukes, the North Carolinas. You got to beat good teams. You got to go back to the Final Four, and you got to win the damn thing. Because I'm tired of John Beilein beating our ass.
Yeah, speaking of John Beilein, they haven't looked that great so far this year.
Dude, they are struggling.
Mainly on the offensive end, which, okay, let's put this in perspective, though, Shea. They lost their best shooting guard in Duncan Robinson, and they lost Mohamed Abdul-Rahman, and then they lost Mo Wagner, my favorite player ever. But those are three big pieces. Am I wrong? I mean, this
No, you're definitely right. But I knew there'd be like drop off. I knew there would be fall off. I didn't know the fall off on the offensive side of the ball would be to this extent. Because through 2 games against Norfolk State and Holy Cross, they're shooting 36% from the field and 20% from 3. And we know Beilein's a 3-a-die guy.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen him in years past not rely on the 3 as much. He's kind of done an all-around type basketball team. Not obviously he tends to shoot the 3 more, but this team isn't built like that. They have Teskey as their starting center. He can't shoot worth a damn. Dude's name is failing me right now, but their starting point guard he can't shoot at all. They have a lot of guys that just can't shoot flat out. But they have a lot of young players. They have a few freshmen that are coming in, just this young talent all around. It's going to take time. I think as Xavier Simpson, that's the guy who can't shoot at all. But as the season progresses, this is what they did last year. No one even talked about Michigan at the beginning of the year last year. They just play solid defense, and I think that's a good starting point for them. Their offense can build and grow as the season goes on, and I guarantee you their next game is at Villanova in a rematch of the national championship game. I think you'll see some solid defensive performances. I don't expect them to win that game, but I do think you'll see solid defense played, and they might give Villanova a run for their money.
Now, it is important. Holy Cross and Norfolk State, neither of these teams are any good, for the record, but neither of them scored 50 points against Michigan. Holy Cross didn't even score 40, and this is a season where the shot clock is a little shorter now, and we're seeing more fast basketball in college basketball. There's a lot of games where teams are scoring 90 or 100 points early. So I think that the fact that Michigan hasn't been able to get above 63 in their first 2 games against subpar opponents is a little bit worrisome, especially with the things that you mentioned. They have a lot of guys who can't shoot, which doesn't hold up well in today's game, especially if they're going to play at the pace that a lot of these teams are playing at right now. But I have to say, Xavier Simpson has kind of showed a lot of ability as like a playmaker, which is really good because Michigan's going to need that.
Yeah, and Xavier Simpson, he's one of the best like driving point guards I think in college basketball. And call me crazy, but like I touched on before, this team is so young. Their starting lineup is a junior, sophomore, a freshman, and then a junior and another freshman. Like they have so much just freshman, sophomore classes, and you got to look at these guys as they develop this year. Ignis I'm going to butcher that. Ignis Brazdelskis, and then DeJulius. He's a stud. I watched some tape on him. He's gonna, he's the backup point guard, but as the season progresses, he's gonna develop, and we're gonna see this team as the year goes on just get better and better.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that Beilein teams usually go. And once you get into league play, they kind of really hit their stride. But I do have some concerns. And I am positively surprised by Michigan State because I kind of thought the drop-off when you lose a guy like Bridges and a guy like Jackson and they're both gone, I thought the drop-off was going to be huge. But Kenny Goins, for being a walk-on, has come out, stepped up into his role really well. Josh Langford has continued playing really good basketball from last year. Cassius Winston is still money from outside. And you got McQuaid finally getting himself into the starting lineup as a senior. He's played really well. And Nick Ward has actually shown up and played some pretty good ball, especially tonight. I wasn't super happy with what I saw against Kansas from Nick, but tonight he looked really good. So I am kind of positive. I think the Big Ten overall is going to be better as far as basketball goes this year, too.
I think definitely Michigan State probably has the better team as of right now, and I think you guys probably will. If I'm being completely honest, you guys probably will sweep the season against Michigan. But I guess the good news for you guys is that, especially for Nick Ward, Mo Wagner isn't on the team to just break his ankles. So, I mean, there's a bright spot. On
that note, we'll call it a show. Thanks for listening to the Monday Mashup. As always, I'm your host, Shea Norling. You can find me on Twitter at NorlingShay. Also follow Tanner at Tanner Seltzer, and spelled like seltzer, by the way, like the drink. And you can find Detroit Sports Podcast on Twitter, at Detroit Podcast. Follow all of us so you can see all of our stupid tweets that we send all the time.
Very stupid.
Love doing the show. Thanks for listening. Have a good week.
Thanks, guys.